Trước khi bắt đầu, nếu bạn đang tìm kiếm sách để học IELTS hiệu quả, thì đây là những cuốn sách chúng mình khuyên dùng. Nó có thể giúp bạn đạt điểm IELTS từ 7.0 tới 8.0. Bạn hãy xem ở phần giỏ hàng trong kênh nhé.
Part 1. You will hear a conversation between a customer and an assistant at a photo digitising service.
Good afternoon, Memory Box Digitising Services. How can I help?
Hello, I'd like to have some old photographs scanned and turned into digital files.
Certainly. Your name?
Ryan Foster.
Thanks. Could you spell your surname for me?
Foster.
Thank you. Please place everything in an envelope with no paper clips so nothing gets bent in transit, and keep it flat. I'll take some details about the materials. Let's begin with the color prints. How many do you have?
120. They're slightly faded, especially the color in the lighter areas.
So the key request is to improve the color, is that right?
Yes, that's the most important thing.
Fine. I'll note that. Now, do you also have black and white photos?
Yes, 85 of them. They're in good condition.
Any special instructions for those?
There are a few small marks on some. Could you remove the scratches?
Remove small scratches. No problem. Next, I have 40 slides listed. What condition are they in?
They're a bit dusty, and I'd like the contrast increased if possible.
Increase contrast. Right. And finally, 60 negatives.
Yes, they're quite fragile, so please handle them with care.
Of course, we'll handle them with care throughout. Now, for the file format, would you prefer JPEG or TIFF? TIFF files are larger, but they offer slightly higher quality.
JPEG is fine. I don't need the larger files.
Great. We'll save everything as JPEG files, then store the whole set on a USB drive.
That's perfect.
As for processing time, the standard service takes 10 days.
10 calendar days?
No, 10 working days only.
That's fine.
If you needed them sooner, we can do an express service for an extra £15.
No, standard is fine.
Once the work is complete, we'll send everything back by registered mail.
Okay.
You'll also receive a tracking number by email, so you can follow the delivery.
Great. That sounds good.
We'll include a summary of the order in the confirmation email as well. If you notice anything incorrect, please contact us within 24 hours.
I will. Thank you very much for your help.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Part 2. You will hear a talk about a new cycle lane development in a public park.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Riverside Park. Before you begin your walk, we have invited Park Officer Samir Patel to explain the recent changes and then talk you through the map. Over to you, Samir.
Thanks, and hello. I will start with the cycle lane development. Some people said the whole project was really about bringing in more visitors, and others believed it was mainly a way to create extra parking. In fact, the aim was to improve access for cyclists traveling into town, particularly at commuting times, by giving them a continuous route that stays inside the park boundary. Next, I want to mention the meadow beside the river. It was not left undeveloped simply to reduce construction costs, and it is not being kept empty for future building plans. The reason for keeping the meadow as it is was to encourage wildlife. Since it has been protected, we have noticed far more butterflies and bees in summer, and more birds feeding there early in the morning. You will also see a new footbridge across the water. Some residents assumed it was a replacement for an older crossing further upstream, while others imagined it would be mainly for taking photographs. The real purpose is safety. The bridge is wider, has handrails on both sides, and it keeps walkers away from the traffic on the road bridge nearby. Finally, there is the garden area. It is not designed for organized public events, and it is not intended for children's activities. It's mainly meant for quiet relaxation with low planting, a circular path, and seats set back from the busiest route. Now let me guide you around the map. If you come in from the main entrance at the bottom, the car park is directly in front of you. It is the only large paved area, and there is a ticket machine in the middle. Just to the left of the entrance, near the path that curves uphill, you will find the information board. That is where park notices and trail updates are posted. From there, follow the left-hand path as it climbs towards the river. Before you reach the water, you will pass the bicycle rental station beside the path under the trees. If you keep going, the path runs along the river edge and opens out into the meadow, which stretches across the northern part of the park. On the far right of that riverside section, you will see the new footbridge crossing the narrow channel and linking the path to the east side. Now return towards the center. The seating area is close to the pond, just south of it, with picnic tables and benches grouped together. If you have questions, staff are usually near the information board in the morning. Enjoy your visit, please keep to the paths and do not feed the wildlife. There are drinking fountains near the central path and bins at each junction, so the park stays tidy.
Bạn đang nghe podcast miễn phí tại IELTS. Nếu bạn yêu quý kênh, hãy ủng hộ chúng mình ở phần mô tả nha.
Part 3. You will hear a discussion between two university students about budget allocation priorities.
We need to be ready for tomorrow's student council meeting. The budget increase is limited, so we can't support every proposal equally.
Exactly. If we try to divide the money between everything, it won't make a noticeable difference anywhere. The chair asked us to identify the two most urgent areas first, and then explain why the remaining proposals still deserve support.
For me, one of those urgent areas has to be student mental health. The support service is under too much pressure, and students are starting to feel let down by it.
I agree. The other one should be campus security. Since those incidents near the bus stop last term, people have been much less comfortable about moving around the campus in the evening.
Yes, safety has become a serious concern. The sports complex is popular, of course, but it doesn't feel as immediate as student support and protection.
I'd say the same about the laboratories. Better equipment would be useful, but for most students, it isn't something they notice from day to day.
And the library matters too, but I still wouldn't put it in the top 2 this year.
So, we're agreed the two main priorities are mental health support and campus security.
Right. Now let's make sure we justify those choices properly. For mental health, we need reasons that are accurate and not overstated.
The strongest point is probably the rise in demand. More students are asking for appointments now than the service can cope with.
And the delay is another problem. Some students are waiting several weeks before they can speak to anyone.
We should be careful not to say the issue is low pay for staff, because that isn't what the figures show.
No, the real problem is that there just aren't enough appointments available.
And it's not because public funding was reduced either. I checked that, and the funding level hasn't been cut.
Also, we shouldn't make it sound like we're reacting to what other universities are doing. Our case is based on the pressure here on our own campus.
Good. That gives us two clear reasons: rising demand and long waiting times.
Fine. Now that we've settled the priorities, let's go through the other proposals one by one and give each of them a distinct supporting reason.
Okay. First, the library upgrades.
That's mainly an academic issue. If students can't get reliable access to essential course materials, their work suffers.
Yes, limited access to textbooks and study resources can affect results.
Next, the proposal for additional security cameras.
That links directly to personal safety. The point is to reduce risk and help students feel more secure, especially after dark.
Agreed. Now, what about renovating the sports complex?
I think the best argument is financial in the long term. If repairs are postponed, minor problems like leaks and damaged flooring could turn into something much more expensive later.
So the case is that acting now avoids a far bigger bill in the future.
Exactly.
Next is extra funding for counseling services.
That one is really about supporting students' well-being. It helps people deal with stress and prevents more serious burnout.
Right. Now, the science laboratories.
At first, I thought we should argue that better facilities would improve the university's image, but the science faculty actually stressed a different point.
Which was?
Recruitment. They said it's becoming harder to attract specialist academic staff when the labs look outdated compared to those at other institutions.
That makes sense. So, for the laboratories, the strongest reason is staff recruitment.
Yes.
Finally, the shuttle bus service.
Some people think that's mainly about reducing parking pressure, but that isn't really the key issue.
No, it's more about making the campus easier to reach for everyone.
Exactly. A wider service would help students living off campus and those with mobility difficulties, particularly in bad weather.
Good. I think that gives us a clear line for every item.
Great. I'll draft the statement tonight and send it to you so you can check it before the meeting.
Part 4. You will hear a lecture about deep ocean mixing and its importance for the global climate system.
Today, I want to explain deep ocean mixing and why it matters for the climate system. Although we talk about the ocean as if it were one body of water, it is organized into layers that can remain stable for years. The two key properties that control this layering are temperature and salinity. Warm water is generally lighter than cold water, so the upper ocean is often warmer and more buoyant than the colder water below. Because of this structure, the surface and the deep sea can become separated, with very little exchange of heat, gases, or nutrients. However, the ocean does not stay permanently stratified. Mixing occurs in several ways, and in a few regions it is strong enough to send surface water down to great depth. The most important locations are the high-latitude oceans. In winter, polar air temperatures drop and the sea surface loses heat to the atmosphere. As the surface cools, its density increases, and the water becomes heavy enough to sink. Cooling alone can be sufficient in some cases, but an additional process often helps the surface reach the sinking threshold. That second process happens during sea ice formation. Sea ice is made from fresh water, and when it freezes, it leaves much of the dissolved salt behind. The surrounding liquid becomes saltier and therefore heavier. Oceanographers sometimes describe this as brine rejection because the salt is concentrated into dense brine that drains into the water beneath. The combined effect of low temperature and high salinity produces very dense water, and once it reaches a critical point, it sinks rapidly. This sinking is not random. It forms part of a global connected system called overturning circulation. Rather than a single current, it is better to imagine a set of pathways linking ocean basins, with water masses moving along different routes and at different depths. Newly formed deep water spreads away from the polar regions and can travel thousands of kilometers, slowly returning toward the surface elsewhere. These pathways help organize the large-scale pattern of ocean currents that transport heat around the planet. One of the most important consequences is climate regulation. Currents carry warm water from the equator toward the poles, and they also return cooler water toward lower latitudes. This redistribution affects regional weather especially along coastlines. If the transport of heat changes, storm tracks and rainfall patterns can shift too. Deep mixing also matters for ocean life. The deep sea contains many nutrients that have sunk from the surface in the form of organic material. When water moves upward, it can return these nutrients to the surface layers where sunlight is available. In the sunlit zone, nutrients support the growth of plankton, including microscopic plants that carry out photosynthesis. Plankton are the base of marine food webs, so their abundance influences fisheries and the wider ecosystem. It is important to distinguish deep mixing from the stirring of the upper ocean. In mid-latitudes, winds and storms can deepen the surface mixed layer, but this usually affects only the top few hundred meters. Tides can also create turbulence when water flows over underwater ridges. This turbulence gradually erodes layering and contributes to the slow upward return flow that balances sinking. Scientists are watching closely to see how climate change may alter these processes. If polar surface waters warm, they may not cool enough in winter to become dense. In addition, melting ice sheets and glaciers add fresh water, which lowers salinity and makes the surface even lighter. Both effects reduce the chance that surface water will sink. Most computer models suggest a complete shutdown is unlikely, but many project a slowdown in the strength of overturning circulation. Monitoring is therefore essential. Researchers deploy autonomous floats and instruments that measure temperature and salinity profiles through the water column. They compare modern records with historical observations to detect trends. Even small changes in density can matter, because a slight shift can prevent water from crossing the threshold required for sinking. Since deep water can remain isolated from the atmosphere for centuries, changes today may have long-lasting consequences. To conclude, deep ocean mixing is driven by density changes created by cooling and by salt being concentrated during sea ice formation. The resulting overturning circulation and associated currents redistribute heat, influence climate, and help supply nutrients that sustain plankton at the surface. Understanding these links allows scientists to make better predictions about future climate and the risks posed by a slowdown in this vital system.
Bạn đang nghe podcast miễn phí tại IELTS. Nếu bạn yêu quý kênh, hãy ủng hộ chúng mình ở phần mô tả nha.